Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. Happy Chinese New Year, or Happy Lunar New Year, what, whatever you call it. All right, and I haven't been talking to you guys for a while, and today I'm going to resume the talking. Today's subject is something like this. What is the relationship between I and the absolute? All right, you may wonder why you have such a topic. Well, as you noticed, probably as I do, recently in C Reader forum, there are some articles or essays regarding the eugenics topic, that is about the racial differences in terms of genes, DNA, on average. And some people say that's something the government is hiding because it's incorrect politically, or some other argues that because they don't have a definite data, or the government forbidding you doing it, stuff like that. But anyway, the point is that I believe there is a real difference in genes between different racial groups, like blacks, the Caucasians, the Asians. Of course, there is. If you study it, if you gather data, you must have it. That's for sure. But the thing is that regarding any particular person, you are not normally at a certain higher ground or better than any other people. For individuals, it's different. So it doesn't mean anything as a sort of a collective euphoria. That's not necessary, really. And so you have to realize this fact. On the other hand, the essays or articles in C Reader Forum mostly argue that is because of the environment. That is the reason which created the difference in terms of genes. Well, I'm responding actually particularly to this part of the argument, because from the philosophical point of view, this is saying that the outer elements or forces, whatever you call it, causing the change in genes, in the mutation of DNA. That sounds to me not quite correct. As you say, a lot of people quoted also that if you say anybody who committed a criminal offenses will blame the genes. So he can say, I have nothing to do with it because my genes is formed like this. That's my parents gave to me. What can I do? So I'm guiltless, right? And it's my parents' problem. No, it's not quite like that, let me assure you. So I'm come to this part. Well, the hidden argument between the against this outer elements for blaming the crime or the bad thing is that there must be some good part in the inner elements which leads to your action. So you are responsible for whatever you are doing. So that's why if you commit crime, the police put you into prison. No question about it. That's basically the general consensus. But here is my point. If you say it's the inner part or the outer part or even the interaction between the inner and the outer elements on both sides, there is still something you have to say further to define what is the inner part. What do you mean by I control my action? What is I? I'm not made by my environment. I'm not a product of my living conditions or my social classes, status. I'm not. All right, there's a lot of things to say about this part. You may argue. So whoever against you on this part probably couldn't say what is the inner part or what is the inner force which shaped what you are versus you are the product of your environment, which should be blamed for your criminal offenses, if any. So my topic today is aiming at this part. All right? I'll talk about specifically what is I. All right? The capital I, you call yourself. What is that part? And what my theory in psychology has anything to contribute to this part of forming I? That is my point. Today's topic. I will address this question. All right, hopefully by now, this is the background first. All right, secondly, I'll say, as people claimed, you are what you are not only by the environment. You are not accepting passively the formation of yourself by the environment or by inheritance from your parents even. You cannot blame them, blame the environment, blame the country, blame the culture, blame whatever you have. Thinking I'm not made of by whatever my environment is or are. No, it's not that. All right? It must be an interaction between the two sides. Your inner part, inner elements, and outer elements. There's the interaction. Sometimes you cannot even say which is the major one, right? And we have a lot of, if you live in China long enough, you know the Chairman Mao used to say, the 内因是决定因素, right? And the sun cannot make a stone to give chicks, right? Only can hatch an egg, right? Because the inner part is different. You heard of that, of course, I'm sure. But if you are asked further the question, what exactly this inner part? What is shaping the concept of I? Probably you cannot say much about it, or you cannot find much about it. And that's what I'm trying to stress here. So, for interaction of what you are, that's for sure. And this is a general consensus, I can say. But very few people, or I have never heard of any, who says exactly what is I, what is this part, the inner part. So I'm going to address this part. All right, so how do I define? The third point, how do I define what is the inner element which made what you are? Okay, here's my theory in psychology coming in to the stage. To me, you are first biological product, right? You're made of matter, right? You have a flesh, you have a muscle, you have bones, you have blood, everything, right? That's a material, that's matter. So, That is for sure. All right, how about any other things you have? Have you ever thought about this? That is what I mean by your brain. The complexity of your brain. That part is something every one of us has, and every one of us, nobody knows much about it. Why we are different? Okay, I want to say this. First, every one of us realizes I can say I, right? You have the idea I as the subject, as a commander of your body, of whatever you do, commander of your action, right? Okay, how did you form the idea of I? To me, it is by the function of the absolute. That is, because your brain, the complexity of your brain, which interacts with the absolute, like sometimes call it a double absolute, absolutely absolute. The two parts interact with each other. That made you what you are. You have the idea I. So you can also say the pure I concept, pure concept of I is from the absolute. All right. Then the interaction between the complexity of your brain biologically and with the absolute, I call it sometimes a little absolute in your brain, or you may just use part of absolute. So it forms you what you are. You can call yourself. To be exact, you can say you have whatever ability you have or whatever you can do, and even regarding your what you look like, or how tall you are, how heavy you are. You can also say this part too. All right. Okay. But I have to let you know, besides the two sides, the absolute part, the complexity of your brain, there's a third part outside of this interaction between the absolute and the complexity of your brain. That is called the environment. That is how you were born into this environment, such as in which culture, in which country, in which location you were born there. That also makes a big difference. So don't get me wrong. Don't say I'm not successful because what's the cause of it? I'm not intelligent, I'm not good, or what's wrong with it? Okay, here's another thing. The interaction between the environment and the interaction between your complexity of your brain with the absolute, that's three things here. All right? And each of which is totally different. So if you can grab a chance, if you see the market, if you realize something other people ahead of other people, that's probably will be a determinant factor in your future success or in your past success. So that's not entirely related to my topic here. So I'm not going to say if you are successful or not. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying only to the part how you decide I. Where does the idea, the concept I comes from? That is my major point. All right? Okay. Speaking of this, I have to come to say this. That is the fourth point. What is the complexity of a brain or your brain structure which made you to realize to have the concept of I? That is my point. I want to say this. so far, we can see in all evolution, whatever, since Darwin's time, we have many kinds of different species. Only one kind of animal, we call it a primate, or whatever you call it, that evolves into a human being, right? And have the capability other animals don't have, right? I don't mean not all ordinary capabilities. Like you can say, if you say human beings can use tools, well, a beaver can too, right? A bird can try to use stones to gather something for his food. Or a monkey can use a stick. Or some gorillas or some other kind of animals can also use that. So I'm not talking about this. What I mean is the most complicated, the highest level of complexity, like the ability to think about logically, the ability to have a mathematics, the ability to have to create the axiomatic system, that kind of a capability, right? Only humans have, no other being, no other animals can have. So that is my point. And here we come to this question, rather, why humans have this ability of thinking this at this high level. Other animals don't. Well, so far we don't have any conclusion. We haven't found any difference between human brains and versus other animals. For example, in terms of size, the whales has a larger size of the brain, right? And so it's not only size which matters. Of course, during the evolution for many years, like millions of years, human beings' brain evolved, increased in volume, that's for sure. But that's not determinate factor in this evolution ladder. So, but anyway, my assumption here, I must say my assumption is there is a certain mathematical function which can determine the complexity of human brains. In other words, when the complexity of brain reaches a certain level, which will connect with the absolute. So the two will combine, interact with each other to form the concept of I. I feel that's the way it is. And also this number of complexity is different, so each person has different concept, difference in terms of thinking about I. That's what I'm thinking. But anyway, that's just my assumption. All right, okay. Next, I want to talk the fifth point. In my theory, the instinctology system, I defined 5 categories. All right, I call it 在, 存在, 定在, and 实在. All right, roughly, what is 在? That is a potential being. Potential, be careful with this word. That means it hasn't formed existence yet. The next category is being, right? If you call it a being, it has a process of forming the being. Before it forms itself, you cannot even say being. That's my point. So, in yourself, have you ever realized you have the will, right? You have the ambition. You have the desire. You have the emotion. But what is that? That is what I call it potential existence. That is 在. All right, this part is 在. All right, when you will, when you desire, when you emotion becomes a thought, that I call it 思在. All right, that is to have concrete understanding or have a formed a complete or very accurate, how can I say that, tangible sort of stuff. You know what it is, right? You can say, I have this idea. That is a sign of a 实在. All right. If for any other things, like for a seed, I call it inside, let's say, non-life matters, like plants, I call it 定在. All right. So the two, either 定在 or 实在, it must pass a stage called being. That is the old concept since Parmenides. All right. So from the potential to being to thinking existence, 实在. All right. Or for determinate being, that is 定在. Okay. So it comes into fruition. Eventually come to reality. Think about that. First, let me give you an example. Let's say you are a car engineer. First, you have this desire. When you go, let's say you lived in the Chinese society hundreds of years ago. When you went abroad, you see other countries have cars running everywhere, and you learned it. You graduated from their schools. Then you came back to China. Then you start to have the desire. I want to make a car for China too. All right. This part is called 在, potential being. You have a desire. Then this desire comes when you think about, when this desire becomes so strong, it becomes a thought. Right? You have a theory. And this is more concrete. How to design something. After you think about this, you have many thoughts about that. This part, this state is called 实在. All right. After this one, you started to draw pictures, to have the blueprints. This is a part of existence already. So this is in the micro world, in time and space, for sure. Right? Eventually, the car was made from your blueprints that become reality. Okay? So basically, this is a stage of what it comes from the earliest stage of a potential, from desire, from your will, from your emotion, to the fruition of a car was produced. So the whole process, you can say that. So basically, let me conclude here, and that's all I want to, basically what I want to say. So you are partially what complexity you are, you have, and partially the environment, and partially the interactions between the three that made what you are in your lifetime. So not only one part, the genes from your parents, or the environment, no matter how polluted, not only the culture, no matter how other people around you doing, which affect who you are, what you are. No, not quite. So three parts. The absolute part, the complexity of your brain, the environment. The three elements interact with each other. That made what you are. All right. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.